Yo, what's going on, guys? It's G Miners here. A lot of you really liked the end game content videos I was putting out last season, and there are also a ton of new players who are just starting out or coming back to D2 for Witch Queen, so I figured now would be the perfect time to go over 5 things to do in Destiny in order to get better at PvE. It really doesn't matter if you are a brand new player or have been playing Destiny since launch. I'm going to go over 5 things that you can do in-game that will help you progress from a complete noob all the way up to a top 2% player. Top 2% sounds insane, but it is a very easily achievable goal, especially with how many people play Destiny. This list does go in order as I mentioned, so if you consider yourself competent at something I mentioned already, then you might want to just skip ahead in the video. Also, real quick, if you guys like this style of video and want to see more ways to improve in Destiny PvE, then let me know in the comments below. I'd also like to shoot for 250 likes on the video as it helps the videos out a ton. If you're watching this and your name is James, then you have to like the video. I'm watching you, James. Okay, so first, if I was starting out in Destiny right now and wanted to get good at PvE, the first thing I would do is start raiding. Vow of the Disciple is the most recent raid that was released, which can be done 3 times each week for new rewards. Strikes, story missions, quest lines, and a bunch of other activities are very, very simplistic in D2. Even if you don't really know what is going on, chances are you can power through these things by just shooting enemies, holding E a few times, and standing in different places. Not very challenging if you ask me. Raiding, on the other hand, is the first time you will experience somewhat difficult mechanics and will need to know exactly what to do. This is also a great way to learn to multitask in-game by managing your ad clear and staying alive, all the while you are trying to complete a very specific task. This also requires 6 players who will all most likely have a role that they are needed for, so not only do you need to do your job right, but you also have to rely on other players to do their job and to communicate with these players during raid encounters. Learning new 6-man DPS strats for raid bosses is also a great way to learn the meta and how certain options are good for certain DPS situations. I would try and learn all the mechanics for Last Wish, Garden of Salvation, Deepstone Crypt, and the brand new raid Vow of the Disciple. Start with one raid at a time and work until you are proficient at it, and then move on to the next one. If you are a solo player, join the LFG Discord that I've linked below, and check the PvE LFG channels for raids that people are looking to do. Tons of people are willing to teach and are looking for chill players. If you find people you like, make a permanent raid team with them and try to do raids each week at a time that works best for you. After getting good at some or even all of the raids, the next thing I would work on is doing the solo, legend, and master lost sectors. Master versions are going to be slightly harder than the legend version, and depending on your power, master versions might not even be possible, so I would definitely start with legend. Soloing these will require you to kill the normal ads that spawn in the lost sector, 2 unique types of champions, and the boss at the very end. You will also be doing this with limited lives and time available. Limited lives is going to force you to play a lot more passive, and limited time is going to force you to play more aggressive. This means you need to find a decent balance that allows you to clear the lost sector quickly without leading to too many deaths. Overall, I think these lost sectors are a great first bump up in difficulty. They also force you to try out different loadouts in order to match burns, shield types, and have weapons for champion stuns. On top of this, you need to have a method down that allows you to solo each champion and still have a way to kill the boss at the very end. These lost sectors are still arguably very easy, but being able to clear these will get you on your way to bigger and badder endgame content. Third up on this list are Grandmaster Nightfalls. At the time of me posting this video, GMs are not yet available for the season, but when they are, these are one of the best ways to learn how to play content when under power. GMs will require you to be at a certain power minimum. Once at this minimum, you will be able to run them, but the GM will lock you at this power, while the strike itself is 25 power higher. This means everything you shoot takes way less damage, and everything that shoots you does way more damage. There are also a handful of difficult modifiers like match game, equipment lock, famine, and more, depending on the strike itself. You also have limited revive tokens and technically limited time if you want to get a high score and the highest quality loot at the end. You will also be going into this with a team of 3, so just like with learning to raid, if you are new to GMs, this will be your first time working with other players to get a clear of something while under power. Being able to clear GMs and do so efficiently highly depends on the loadouts that your entire team is running. Oftentimes, one player might be running 2 exotics that just support the other 2 players like Divinity and Aeon Soul. This way, the other 2 players can constantly have ammo and always have a debuff for champions and the boss at the end. I would say on this list, GMs are the first piece of content that I would consider difficult. Normal raids are extremely casual once you get them down, and solo lost sectors just require finding a decent loadout to get a clear. GMs require a decent team that knows what they are doing and has a good team comp and loadout. Naturally, some GMs are going to be much harder than others, so I recommend starting out with easier ones like Lake of Shadows and then working your way through the others. Before I finish up the list, if you guys find this video useful, don't forget to drop a like and sub down below. We are super close to 15K. Subbing is completely free. It helps me out a ton, and you can always change your mind later. Number 4 on this list is going to separate the boys from men. This is solo flawless dungeons and low man raid clears. In general, solo flawlessing dungeons is going to be much easier for people because they don't need a solid team, and overall dungeon mechanics are a lot easier than raid mechanics. Just like with Lost Sectors, you are going to find out that certain loadouts that fit the meta of the season are going to make clearing encounters much easier. And while running these dungeons, you will need to play much more passive in order to prevent any dumb deaths. The reason I think dungeons are easier is because in general, they don't have many or any wipe mechanics at all. This means you can play as slow as you want for something like a boss encounter, slowly work your way to a damage phase, do a fourth of the boss's health, and then repeat until it is dead. There is no pressure of failure unless you die from ads, the boss, or the environment. Low man clears, on the other hand, require you to sweat a little bit more. Each raid encounter that has ever been made has a wipe mechanic, to my knowledge. This means you are constantly racing against the clock to complete mechanics and kill ads. Mechanics also require players to have different roles, which can complicate things like your loadout options or even the ability to use certain weapons. For the third encounter in Vow of the Disciple, the 3-man requires all 3 players to use relics, which means no supers, specials, or heavy weapons for ad clear. Most of these mechanics were also designed for 6 players, so in order to 3-man these, you may have to exploit certain things in game that bypass these mechanics and make them doable for 3 players. Even if this isn't doing the raid as intended, it still requires you to learn how to play the game in a different way. If you are a player who is good at Destiny and wants to become even better, these low man clears are the place to start in my opinion. Get a decent squad of 3, start with 1 raid at a time, and focus on getting the clear, and then move on. The reason most people don't get better at Destiny is because they never challenge themselves with harder content. This is harder content. Last on this list, but definitely not the least, is Master Raiding and Day 1 raid clears. Starting with Master Raids, right now we only have Master Vogue, but we will be getting Master Vow in around a month. The reason Master Raiding is so hard is because for most players they will be under power, and there are additional champions and modifiers making the raid much harder. This often requires teams to use different strats to get clears for each encounter. I even have an entire playlist going over certain strats and cheeses in Vogue that my team would use to help us get quicker, more consistent clears. The challenges also reward adept raid weapons, most of which drop with really good curated rolls. Most players want these weapons, so the challenges add another layer of difficulty to getting a clear. If you have a team that is prepping for a Day 1 raid or is just trying to get better at raiding and endgame content in general, then Master Raids are the place to do it. For most players, the first clear is going to be insanely hard, but after you get it once, it becomes increasingly easier with each run. The only time master content like this becomes easy is when you are plus 30 in your artifact and can do them of power. That brings us to Day 1 raiding. Unlike master raids, it doesn't matter how high your artifact power is, you will always be under power on Day 1. Contest mode locks players to 20 power under the raid power level for a full 24 hours upon the raid's release. Day 1 raids are by far the hardest thing to do in Destiny for most players, as you are going into an activity completely blind while, once again, under power. Everything hits you way harder than you can hit it, and having no clue what to do means that you need to kill these ads and manage to stay alive long enough to figure out mechanics. Bosses that take less damage are also going to seem almost impossible to kill before they get enraged and wipe your team. There is a reason that only a small percentage of the community are able to get Day 1 clears. It requires a solid team of 6, all of which can hold their own and are smart enough to not only figure out mechanics, but develop strats to beat the new mechanics while 20 under. This is the pinnacle of endgame content in Destiny, by far the hardest to beat, but also hands down the most rewarding thing you can do in all of D2. This is my list of 5 things to do in order to get better at Destiny 2. I think this list gives everyone a place they can start and then work up from. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and as always, if you have any questions, I will try my best to answer them there too. Have a good one, guys. Peace.